My name's Travis Holt, Oregon Department of Forestry, out of Medford. 14 years on the job. Fires, floods, mudslides, you name it, I've been stationed through it. But none of that ever rattled me like what happened in that tower. I've spent most of my adult life watching trees. You learn things from that. You learn that stillness doesn't mean safety, that quiet isn't always peace, and that sometimes the woods are looking back. They assigned me to Watchtower 6 in the summer of 2019. It was a last-minute reassignment. The original lookout never showed up, called out sick just days before. So they handed me the keys. No briefing, no orientation, just a coordinates sheet and a warning. Radio can get weird up there. Don't panic. That tower. It hadn't been staffed in 11 years. No one told me why, but every ranger I talked to, they got quiet when I brought it up. Real quiet. Ron Vargas, my district supervisor, he handed me the cabin logbook and said, "You won't need that. Place has been dead for a decade." That wasn't true. I found pencil marks from 2015, a whole section of the log redacted in black marker, pages torn clean out as if someone didn't want what was written to be found. The location itself was remote as hell. You couldn't reach it by truck. You had to hike in the last mile on foot. Steep, narrow trail, overgrown on both sides. Tower sat right on the ridge above Dead Man's Gulch. No running water, no backup power, just a two-way radio and an old analog scanner that whined every time you turned it on. The first 3 days were slow. Smoke in the far west hills, but nothing urgent. A few lazy deer down in the low brush. I logged a downed tree near milepost 7. Not much else, but something was off. I couldn't put my finger on it. The air felt heavier. Not storm heavy, just wrong. The animals were quiet. No bird song after sunset, no rustling after dark, not even the wind, just silence. Then came the night of July 17th, 11:42 p.m. That's when the transmission came through. I hadn't keyed the mic. I wasn't even near the desk. I was brushing my teeth, window open, just staring out at the treetops when the radio clicked on by itself. And I heard my own voice. Base. I'm seeing movement down by the old ridge. There's no trail there anymore. Can you confirm anyone in Sector 12? That's not a person. I can see through it. I dropped the toothbrush. My stomach turned cold. I knew that voice. It was mine. But I hadn't spoken. I hadn't touched the mic. I scrambled to the desk, thinking maybe the scanner had picked up an old loop, but the logs showed real-time broadcast. Same channel, same frequency, same signature. Someone, or something, had used my voice, and worse, it had used my coordinates. I looked out again. The forest was still. No lights, no movement, but something inside me said, "Don't blink." The trees beyond the gulch shifted, not the wind. They moved, bent inward, like something was parting them from the inside, one at a time, like fingers through grass. I grabbed the binoculars and zeroed in. That's when I saw it. Hanging from a branch, like some kind of grotesque warning. Skin, just skin, human, tan, peeled clean. No blood, no bone, no body, just the outer layer draped across a limb like a shirt someone forgot after a swim. I could see the hand. The entire hand, limp and turned inside out. I scanned lower. Something moved behind the trunk. Tall, too tall, smooth shoulders, no hair, no defined face, just a shifting outline of something humanoid, but wrong. And it wasn't walking, it was gliding. It turned, and in that half second, I swear to God, it became me. Same posture, same stance, same field jacket. Then it stepped back behind the tree and vanished. I didn't sleep that night. I pulled the blinds, locked the hatch, turned off the lights, and sat on the floor with my back to the door, waiting for the sun, praying the thing outside didn't remember my voice. They'll say it was exhaustion, hallucination, audio drift. But you don't hallucinate your own voice asking for backup, and you don't forget the sound of something speaking through your throat when your mouth is shut. What happened up there was real, and whatever I saw, it knew me. It had studied me, enough to mimic the way I breathe between words, enough to broadcast from my call sign. They'll try to hide this. They've already buried the log entries, claimed the tower has mold, that it's unsafe. But the truth is, that tower saw something. And I wasn't the first. When I came back down, I checked every shift roster since 2005. 3 other lookouts went dark at that post. 1 quit forestry altogether. 2 were never found. Their personnel files list them as voluntary termination, but none of them turned in their keys. Just like the one I found in the cabin's floorboards, wrapped in human skin. That's not folklore. That's an official field report, blacked out line for line. I've got the photos. I've got the logs. And I'm telling you now, before they shut this down, if you think you're alone in the deep woods, you're wrong. Because something out there wears us, learns us, waits until we're alone enough to take our place. MindFuel presents Fire. Lookout Nightmare. I found their skin, not their bodies. This is just the beginning. You think the worst part is the skin? Number. That's just what it leaves behind. Stick with me. Subscribe to MindFuel. Because once you hear the transmission logs, the ranger testimonies they buried, and the real reason Watchtower 6 went dark in 2008, you'll understand. These things don't just watch, they replace. They told me it would be 2 weeks, a temporary fill-in until the new full-timer cleared medical. Just a standard rotation. Nothing complicated. Log the skies, file your reports, check in twice a day, then go home. I lasted 5 days. They flew me into Wenatchee National Forest, northern Washington. Watchtower 6 had been classified under secondary fire observation. That meant low priority, no foot traffic, no tourism nearby, just trees, miles of them, thick and unbroken, the kind of place where time loses its grip. I was dropped off by a Forest Service chopper. The landing pad was just a circle of flattened weeds. Pilot didn't stick around, said the updrafts made him nervous near the ridge. I remember his last words as he lifted off. If the radios fail, just write everything down. They'll send someone by eventually. That word stuck with me. Eventually. It didn't sound like a schedule. It sounded like a shrug. The trail to the tower was steep, but I'd hiked worse. 30 minutes later, I was unlocking a rusted metal hatch and stepping into a place that smelled like paper and dust. The air was dry, the bed hadn't been made, and there were still 2 empty coffee mugs in the sink. But the last recorded occupant had left over 3 months earlier. I should have known something wasn't right then. Day 1 was uneventful. Clear skies, a distant storm visible beyond the Cascades. At 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., I radioed in per protocol. Weather, stable. Visibility, full. No smoke, no activity. Logged everything by hand in the old ledger they kept on the desk. The calm. It felt artificial, like it had been staged. I found the maintenance binder while going through the drawer under the desk. It was standard issue, documenting repairs, upgrades, scheduled inspections. But this one had something odd. A red-stamped section labeled Temporary Staff Incidents. Most of it had been removed, literally cut out with scissors, but a few loose pages had slipped between the folder and the back cover. One was handwritten. No date. Just a single paragraph, shaky penmanship. Tower secured. No response on August 8th, August 9th, August 10th. Found outer garments draped on railing, boots 50 yards north, empty, no signs of trauma, station left open, relieved staff missing, no contact made. Another page was typed, partial memo format, ending mid-sentence. Recommending psychological screening for anyone posted longer than 6 days. Symptoms consistent: paranoia, auditory anomalies, prolonged silence episodes. 1. Reported visual hallucination resembling self. That last part. Resembling self. I read it twice, then put the page back. The next 3 days were quiet, but too quiet. You don't realize how much background noise we live with until you don't have it. No cars, no dogs, no power lines humming, just the faint rustle of pine needles when the wind passed through. By day 3, I began noticing things. Nothing dramatic, just shifts. The fire map had fresh markings that weren't there the night before. Burn radius lines redrawn in a thicker pencil than the one I used. I'd wake up to find the coffee kettle warm, though I hadn't boiled water since the previous morning. And the stairs creaked at night. Always the same 3. Step, pause. Step, pause. Step. Never up, never down. I kept checking the door latch. It was always locked. The radio started acting up the morning of day 4. Heavy static. Then it went completely silent during my 8 a.m. check-in. I tried switching channels. Nothing. So I logged the failure and moved on with my scan. But later that afternoon, while cleaning out the old supply locker, I found something worse. Something that didn't belong. Tucked behind a stack of water jugs and expired MREs was a Forest Service duffel. Inside it, a pair of field boots, caked with dry reddish soil, and a folded uniform. Forestry badge still attached. The name patch read J. McCulloch. I recognized the name. McCulloch was the last ranger scheduled to staff Watchtower 6 before me, the one who called out sick. I checked the log. His checkout date was never recorded, and next to the duffel was something else. A mirror, cracked, handheld, just sitting there, face down. When I turned it over, I nearly dropped it, because etched into the back with a knife were the words, "It learns by watching you." That was the last time I felt alone, because from that moment forward, I was sure something else was inside that tower. Something that didn't breathe, didn't speak, but waited. I should have radioed out, I should have hiked back down, but I didn't, because by then, it wasn't just watching me, it had started copying me. Day 5 began with smoke, not in the sky, on the scanner. At 0614 hours, I received an automated relay from Central Dispatch, flagged Priority Level 2, possible ignition site detected, Sector 12. That was my sector. I stepped out onto the catwalk, scanned the horizon. Clear skies, not even a column. I radioed in a negative confirmation, but got no response. I checked the weather again. No lightning strikes in the last 24 hours. Humidity was too high for a flare-up. Then I noticed it, a thin layer of gray dust on the eastern window ledge. At first I thought it was pollen, but it smeared like soot. Fine, chalky, and cold. I ran a match test on a steel plate. Ash. Burned organic matter. But there was no smell. Nothing in the air. No distant glow at night. Just that silent blanket of residue, as if the fire had already passed. Without light. Without heat. I made a note in the log and took a sample. I left the jar on the shelf. That evening, at 1802, I received another automated signal. Same coordinates. Sector 12, smoke density rising. I stepped outside again. Still no sign. But this time, I took the binoculars. Scanned the entire southern tree line in sweeps. On the third pass, something caught my eye. A shimmer. A break in the pattern of trees. Then, movement. Fast. Too fast. Something pale darted across the ridge, just inside the timberline. No color to it, No clothes, no skin. It moved wrong. Too smooth. It didn't seem to run, it slid. Arms too long, knees bent the wrong way. I yanked the binoculars down and just stared. My hands were shaking. I told myself I was overtired. Maybe the reflection caught moonlight, maybe heat distortion from the valley. But then I noticed something worse. The soot. It was back. On the sill I'd just cleaned. Thicker this time, like it had settled in just minutes. I checked the interior, every window had it, as if the tower was being dusted from above, but there were no clouds, no ashfall alerts. I opened the front hatch and climbed down the first 5 steps. The air was clean. The forest was dead silent. I crouched, pressed 2 fingers to the soil, and found more of it. A thin line of ash trailing off the staircase and into the woods. Not scattered, deliberate, like a trail. I followed it just 20 feet before something made me stop cold. It wasn't a scent, it wasn't sound, just pressure. Like I'd stepped into a place I didn't belong, a part of the forest that didn't recognize me. Every tree around me felt unnatural, like they'd been placed there, not grown. The canopy above didn't match the spacing below. I know trees. I read topography like most people read street signs. But this grove, it didn't make sense. And then I saw it again. Movement, 30 yards out. That pale, skinless figure, just standing, facing me, head tilted, arms hanging, and even at that distance, I could feel its eyes. Not see them, feel them, watching, studying. I stepped back. 1 foot, then another. Slow, controlled. And that thing? It mimicked me. Same number of steps, same pace. Its head moved the same way. I turned and climbed the steps. Didn't run, not yet. Locked the hatch. Then sat in the corner of the tower until morning. Didn't sleep, didn't eat, just listened. For hours. The woods made no sound. Then, around 4:30 a.m., I heard something I will never forget. A single knock from underneath the floorboards. Measured. Solid. Then, a second. And a third. That same rhythm again. Step. Pause. Step. Pause. Step. But I wasn't moving, and I was no longer sure if I was the one being watched or the one being learned. I shouldn't have gone down there, but the screams didn't sound like animals. They came just before dawn, sharp, clipped, human. Not the kind of sound you mistake for a fox or a bobcat. They had weight, panic, not long, just 2 bursts, like someone trying to shout, but getting cut short. First time I heard it, I froze. Second time, I moved. I geared up, field pack, radio, sidearm. Told myself it was a lost hiker, maybe someone who wandered off trail. Maybe. But the truth is, I didn't believe that. I just couldn't sit up in that tower another minute staring out at trees that stared back. The screams came from the southeast ridge, down past where the old trail ends. I descended slow, scanning both sides as I moved. My boots kicked up dust that clung to everything, ash again. It clung to the trees like old snow, even though the fires hadn't touched this region in years. About half a mile out, I spotted something strange. A break in the underbrush. Subtle. Low branches twisted aside, ground flattened in a narrow line. It wasn't a marked trail. No signs, no cuts, just worn. Like something passed through often enough to carve a path without wanting to be seen. I hesitated. Looked back toward the tower. Could barely see it now, just the tip above the trees. I marked my GPS, dropped a breadcrumb marker, and stepped off the path. The air shifted immediately. Cooler, still, no breeze, just the feeling because of going underground, even though I was still walking above it. The trees thickened, growing too close together, canopy forming a ceiling so dense it blocked half the morning light. My radio started clicking, intermittent static, like It was catching a signal it couldn't hold. 30 minutes in, the trail opened up into a shallow ravine. That's where I found the shelter, if you could even call it that. It looked like a fire cabin, Forest Service standard, old model, probably pre-1970s. But there was no record of any structure out here. I checked the digital map, even the old paper charts back in the tower. Nothing. The door was ajar, weather-rotted, covered in moss. I called out. Nothing. Walked closer, crunching ash under every step. Inside, it smelled like mildew and copper. The floor had long since warped, and the far wall had collapsed inward from a fallen tree. There was a bed frame, a small desk, and hanging from the hook behind the door was a ranger jacket. Badged. Name patch peeled off, edges scorched. But it was the kind issued before my time. Maybe early 2000s. I reached for it, but my hand stopped, because just below the desk, coiled in a shape that didn't make sense at first, was something I couldn't immediately understand. I crouched, looked closer. It wasn't fabric, it wasn't gear. It was skin, human, whole, empty, hollow and dry like something shed, no cuts, no tears. It hadn't been skinned, it had been vacated. The face was still intact. Eye sockets sagged inward, lips curled, slightly open. The hands still had fingerprints. The soles of the feet looked worn, like whoever this used to be had spent years walking in boots. I backed up and nearly fell through the warped floorboards. That's when the screaming returned. But this time, it wasn't distant. It came from behind the shelter. And it sounded like me. Same voice, same pitch, screaming words I couldn't make out, but the rhythm matched my own. And worse, my radio kicked on at the exact same moment. Travis Holt, Fire Lookout 6. Please, if anyone can hear me, I'm not in the tower anymore. It's got my voice. It's got my voice. Click. That message wasn't possible. I was holding the radio. I never transmitted it. And yet, it was my voice. From the same frequency, with my own call sign. I ran, left the shelter, marked nothing, fled straight back up the ravine, following my trail of ash. The radio buzzed again as I climbed. Same voice, same message, repeating, like a warning or a lure. Not in the tower anymore. It's got my voice. By the time I reached the fire tower ladder, the sun had broken through the clouds. Everything looked normal again. But I didn't climb. I didn't move. Because at the top of the tower, leaning on the railing, was someone in my jacket. My posture, staring down at me. And I swear to God, it smiled. They told me to stay in the tower. That's all they said. No reasoning, no follow-up, no reassignment. Just remain in position. Do not leave the structure. Maintain visual logs until relieved. But after what I saw, after what I heard in that ravine, I didn't want to stay in that tower. I wanted out. As soon as I saw the thing, me, standing on the upper deck of my own post, I backed away from the tree line. Not running, just retreating, careful not to make a sound. I circled wide, staying in the open, eyes on the hatch. But when I looked up again, it was gone. No one on the railing, no movement inside. I waited until the light changed, until the long shadow of the tower fell across the clearing. Then I climbed. Step by step, radio clipped to my shoulder, ready to call for help. I sealed the hatch behind me and immediately went to the desk, switched on the base unit, dialed into Channel 1A, primary ops. This is Fire Lookout 6 reporting from Sector 12. Urgent. I need immediate evacuation. Repeat. Requesting immediate evacuation. Confirm copy? Static. Then, just faintly, a voice. Not mine. Not yet. At first, it sounded like a broken recording. A low whisper, full of clicks and hiss, repeating only my last sentence. Requesting immediate evacuation. Confirm copy? Then again, slower. Immediate, confirm. But the whisper wasn't coming from the speaker anymore. It was behind me, inside the room. I turned fast. Nothing, just my empty cot, the map, the journal. I scanned the floor, the corners, even the underside of the desk. No one. Nothing. And yet, the air was breathing. Not with wind, with presence. Like someone had just stepped out, or was about to step in. I shut off the base unit, pulled the logbook toward me and wrote one line. Voice mimicked through radio. Delayed transmission. Echoed speech. No ID. After that, I didn't attempt another call. I didn't want to hear myself again. I double-checked every window, relatched the crawl hatch, shut off the lights, and tried to sleep. I didn't. I stayed curled in the corner, eyes fixed on the door, field knife drawn across my lap. Not that it would have done anything. Eventually, maybe around 2 or 3 a.m., my eyes got too heavy to fight. I don't remember closing them. I just remember waking up and knowing I wasn't alone. The lights were still off, the hatch still sealed, but something had changed. I could smell it first, something metallic like warm coins and sweat. Then I noticed the crunch under my boot as I stood. One of my MREs, open, torn down the side. Contents smeared across the floor in a slow drag pattern. My supply crate was open, cans rolled out, labels torn, 2 of the water jugs punctured and half drained. And across the inside of the window, a handprint, long, thin, almost human, except it had no ridgelines, no fingerprints, just smooth flesh, like something that had never earned skin. I pressed mine next to it. The shape matched. The size matched. But the spacing was off. Slightly stretched, like something was trying to copy me, but hadn't quite gotten the proportions right. I swept the room, top to bottom, inside cabinets, beneath the cot, behind the radio casing. Nothing, no entry, no prints, just an opened ration and a stolen drink of water. And that print. I should have written it all down, logged the damage, bagged the wrappers, but I didn't. Because right then, the radio chirped again, and my voice came through. Calm, steady, but not me. Not the me sitting frozen in that tower. This is Fire Lookout 6. Sector 12 secure, no activity, skies clear, wind steady, no sign of movement. The report was perfect, word for word, by the book. But I hadn't keyed the mic, and I was listening to someone else pretending to be me. And worse, someone back at Central Dispatch had just logged it. Logged him as me. I stood there, listening to myself, listening to my replacement, while something in the room had chewed through my rations and marked the glass with hands that didn't belong. There's a name for places like this, spots on the map where the ground never quite settles, where time runs a little offbeat and the trees all lean just a few degrees too far in. Rangers call this stretch the Hollow Mile. Not officially. You won't find that on any trail marker or in any brochure. But when I mentioned the ridge to Ron Vargas, my old supervisor, his voice changed. Not scared, not surprised, just resigned. Yeah, he said, they never should have built a tower out there. Ridge was already spoken for. Spoken for. I asked what he meant. He said he didn't like to talk about it over the radio, but he did say one thing before signing off. Ask the old names. Ask the ones who were here before us. I called a contact from my fieldwork days, Daniel Three Fires, Yakima tribal historian. We'd crossed paths before during wildfire mapping in Toppenish. I told him about the ridge, the ash, the skin. There was a pause. Then, calmly, he said, "You're near the Flarelands." I didn't speak. I just let him keep going. The tribe never lived on that stretch. not even our ancestors. They called it Tamanak, the watching hollow. The elders said it belonged to something older, something that mimics life, something that wears you, but doesn't know how to be you. According to him, the stories go back generations, and they were always the same. Hunters gone missing without a sound, families finding their own footprints circling the camp at night. And once, in the mid-1800s, a young boy found his father standing outside their lodge at dawn, waving him over. But his father had already died the night before. And when the villagers followed the boy's tracks, they found him unconscious near the edge of the ravine, his clothes inside out, and his skin missing. I asked him what they looked like. He told me, "They don't have a shape, just a purpose. They don't kill for food. They strip, peel you open like a coat, hang your skin out to dry, step inside, and walk around." He sent me photos from a rock wall not far from the area, old carvings. The figures weren't animals or spirits. They were people, outlined shapes, being pulled open at the seams. One figure stood over them, no face, no eyes, just long fingers and blank feet. It stood taller than the rest, alone. No campfires carved near it, no dwellings, just one word beneath it in etched lines: Skullatox. I asked what it meant. Daniel said the word didn't translate cleanly. Closest meaning? One who leaves the body behind. After the call, I sat there, in the tower, staring out at the trees, wondering if that thing down there, the one that wore my face, knew what I'd just learned. If it understood that I now knew its name. And more than that, I wondered if it had a name for me. If it was watching me the same way I'd watched it, studying my posture, my voice, my routines, learning how to make them its own, and if it was just waiting. For the moment, I finally left the tower, so it could walk back in, and no one would ever know the difference. It waved, but it had no fingers, just long strands of stretched skin flapping like cloth in the breeze. I spotted it right before dusk, south tree line, far off, almost too far to be sure. I'd scanned that ridge 100 times before, logged every stump, every branch, every standing trunk twisted by time, but that night, one of them moved. Not a bird, not wind, a silhouette, human-shaped, but not human. Its arms hung too low, its neck arched forward like it was sniffing the air for me. It didn't have a face, just folds. Sheets of thin, wet skin swaying with each step, the way old fabric shifts when caught on a fence post. And then it lifted one arm and waved. But the hand had no structure, no fingers, just skin. Loose, wide, like a torn flag. I didn't wave back. I stepped away from the window, sat in the corner of the tower, knife in my lap, shaking. I waited until dark. No movement, no sound, just that pressure again, like the sky itself was holding its breath. And then, just before dawn, I opened the hatch to check the wind readings, and saw it. Something had been left on the outside wall of the tower. I didn't see it at first. It blended in with the wood, pinned flat against the siding, sagging. But when I turned my headlamp on, the beam caught a glossy patch, a curve, a fold, and I realized what I was looking at. Skin, draped, like laundry, shoulders, arms, chest, stretched flat, hollow. There were seams where the face had been, slits at the mouth, shriveled shut. The spine was intact, but there were no bones, just the shell. It hadn't been torn off. It had been stepped out of. I locked the hatch, shut every window, and for the first time, I slid the heavy metal file cabinet in front of the door. I didn't move again until noon. That afternoon, the visions started. I say visions because I can't prove what I saw, but I know I saw it. Faces, in the tree line. Not strangers, people I knew. My brother, a friend I lost in a landslide years ago, a ranger I'd trained with in Utah who'd gone missing in Arizona back in 2018. They stood just beyond the reach of the sun, in that hazy space where light breaks against the branches. They were smiling. They didn't call my name. They just opened their mouths and moved their lips. I couldn't hear them, not at first. But when I raised the binoculars, something strange happened. The glass fogged instantly, from the inside, like something had exhaled across my eyes, and then I heard it. From the radio. Not on a frequency, not as a transmission, just coming through, as if the static had given up and let the forest speak. Voices, so many, layered, whispered, all saying the same thing. Let us in. I smashed the radio with my boot, just to silence them. But the whisper didn't stop, because it wasn't in the radio, it was in me. I started pacing, muttering to myself, asking the same question over and over. How long had it been up here pretending to be me? How long until someone else answered it instead of me? The food was running low. The water was down to a third. And outside the tower, in every direction, the trees were shifting, not swaying, repositioning, closer, every night, closer, forming a ring, sealing me in, and always, at dusk, that thing at the tree line, waving, not because it wanted to greet me, but because it knew I was going to come down, eventually. It got inside my head. I know that now. But that morning, it felt like a decision I made. I told myself I needed answers, that I couldn't keep hiding in that tower, waiting for the next knock or the next voice on the radio pretending to be me. So I left. Midday, sun overhead, air dry, no wind. Everything too still, like the forest had been paused. I didn't follow the trail this time. Not the marked one, not the hidden one. I let my boots drift where the pressure led me. Not instinct, not logic. Something deeper, something old. About an hour out, I passed through a stretch of brush that had been flattened, not by weather, but by weight. Repeated weight. Something large or frequent. I pushed through it and came to a clearing. Small, circular, almost perfect. At its center was a depression in the earth, roughly 10 feet wide, shallow, almost hidden beneath a mess of pine needles and moss. But the way the trees leaned outward from it, as if they'd been growing away from the center, that's what told me it wasn't just a hole. I stepped closer. The ground shifted slightly, damp but not muddy, warm but with no sun touching it. And then I smelled it. Not rot, not death, just salt. Salt and copper, like sweat soaked into leather. I knelt down, brushed away a layer of brush, and saw fabric, no, skin. I staggered back, caught my breath, went back in, peeled away more of the moss. What I uncovered wasn't a body. It was bodies, dozens of them, not buried, not broken, just emptied. They hung from the roots like coats, folded, curled, hollow, some pinned by thin strands of bark as if threaded through. Rangers, hikers, locals, their uniforms rotted, their name patches barely readable. One still had a wedding ring looped through a shoelace. Another had a field journal tucked into the chest cavity, its pages damp, its ink smeared into veins. But no bones, no blood, no muscle, just the wrappings. And then one of them twitched. A leg spasmed, a shoulder shivered, not like something alive, like something remembering. Like the body still thought it had someone in it. I dropped my pack, backed up, and then I heard it. My name. Travis. A whisper, but not from around me, from underneath me. I turned slowly, scanning the shadows, my own breath caught in my throat. It came again. Clearer now. Travis Holt. No urgency, no emotion, just curiosity, like a child reading off a name tag. I looked down at the sinkhole again and saw movement, not from the bodies, from the dirt. The soil was rising from beneath. Something was coming up, slow, deliberate. I didn't wait to see what shape it would take. I ran, hard, no trail, no bearings, just straight toward light, toward distance, toward the sound of anything not whispering my name. I tore through the brush, bleeding from the thorns, scraping skin on bark. I didn't stop until I saw the tower again, high above, metal catching sun. I climbed so fast I nearly fell twice, pulled myself through the hatch and slammed it shut behind me, and only then, only once I was back inside, I realized I wasn't alone. Something was in the tower, not hiding, waiting. I returned to the tower, and I was already in it. I stopped cold at the edge of the clearing, my lungs burning, my legs caked in ash and pine resin. But that didn't matter. None of it did, because at the top of the tower, framed perfectly in the west-facing window, was me, standing, arms at my sides, wearing my jacket, my face. It didn't move when I stepped into the open. It didn't flinch. It watched, and then it smiled. But the smile was wrong, too wide, no tension in the cheeks. Lips stretched but never stopped. That wasn't a grin. That was a display, like a child holding up a mask it doesn't know how to wear. I charged the stairs, every step like thunder under my boots. I hit the hatch with my shoulder and burst through, knife drawn, empty. The cot was undisturbed, the desk untouched, the supply bin still open from when I left. But the air, it stank, like meat left in the sun. I turned, and there it was, in the corner, not standing, hanging, like it had been pressed there, waiting, the skin wrinkled, like it had shrunk overnight. But it still looked like me, still wore me. I stepped forward. It didn't flinch. I raised the knife. And that's when it turned. Not turned its head. It turned itself inside out in one motion, a wet, slapping sound as its chest split and folded backward. My face peeled off like a hood, revealing nothing beneath. No bone, no muscle. Just slick, raw absence. It screeched, not like a voice, like air being sucked through a torn throat. And it ran, straight past me, out the hatch, moving like fluid, all jointless and slapping. It rolled down the stairs, leaving behind a line of blackened footprints that steamed where they touched. I didn't chase it. I couldn't move. Not because I was afraid, because something in the tower had changed. I looked down at the floor. It was warping. The wood beneath my boots, cracked, blackened. The walls, dry 1 minute, were now weeping brown water, thick as oil. The desk, corroded, rust blooming like mold across the metal legs. My canteen hissed. I opened it. The water inside had turned, not cloudy, rotted. My gear ruined. My radio fused. The map peeled off the wall like dead skin. It all happened in hours, not weeks, like the tower had aged, in real time, decades in a single breath. And the smell, that was the worst part. It wasn't rot anymore. It was me. I knew the scent, sweat, iron, the faint trace of pine soap I kept in my duffel. Everything in that room now reeked of me. Because that thing, that copy, had worn me from the inside and left part of itself behind, like a mold that couldn't survive without its host, but was happy to rot everything else once it left. And I knew then, this tower wasn't mine anymore. It had never been. They pulled me out 2 days later. 2 days. I don't remember most of them. I only know the time because the logs were still intact. The ones I scratched into the side of the cot with my knife after the ink in my pen turned to paste. Day 1 after the rot set in, I stopped eating. Day 2, I stopped trusting my reflection. Day 3, the tower stopped creaking. Not because the wind died, but because something had climbed up and wasn't leaving. When the chopper finally came, I didn't signal it. I didn't even hear it until it was nearly overhead. The rot hadn't just taken the tower, it had taken the sound. I don't know who called for my evacuation. I hadn't gotten through. But someone did. And when the search crew broke the hatch open and hauled me out, I was sitting in the dark, knife still in my lap, whispering into a dead radio. They didn't speak much on the flight. I asked them if they saw anything on the ridge. The pilot said, "Just trees, man." But he wasn't looking at me when he said it. I was dropped at base camp, debriefed in a tent that smelled like antiseptic and overcooked instant rice. My supervisor, Ron Vargas, sat across from me. Didn't take notes. Just stared. I told him everything. From the smoke reports to the hollow skins, the voice on the radio, the thing that wore my face. I laid it out clean, no exaggerations, no wild theories, just facts. He listened, and when I finished, he sighed, like a man who'd heard it all before. Then he leaned forward and said, "Travis, that ridge does something to the mind. It isolates you, makes you see shadows. We've had guys lose weeks out there. It's not uncommon." I nodded, but I didn't agree, because that wasn't just dismissal. That was a rehearsed line, and I realized I wasn't the first. I was just the latest in a line of rangers sent in to be seen. And, hopefully, come back. A week later, while digging through old clearance files from an unsecured archive folder, one that hadn't been properly scrubbed, I found something. A scanned copy of a field report dated July 3rd, 1996. The header was standard Forest Service format, but the name caught my eye. J. Kearns. I didn't recognize it. There was no corresponding exit form, just the report. It described the same tower, same ridge, same ash, without fire. Same voice on the frequency repeating back transmissions. Same thing seen watching from the trees. Too tall, arms too long, skin hanging loose like a discarded tarp. Kearns wrote, in crisp block letters, "I made radio contact on day 4. But the reply wasn't mine. It spoke like me. It knew my patrol logs. It asked for evac before I even picked up the mic. The final page had only one sentence, written in a different ink, slightly smeared, like it was added in haste. It left my skin, but it took my shadow. I stared at those words for a long time, wondering how long he lasted, wondering if I'd brought something back with me. Because ever since I left that tower, my reflection's been half a second too slow, and every night before sleep, I hear my name whispered from inside the walls. I moved far from the forest, as far as I could. No more towers, no more ash, no more long, straight roads with nothing on either side but trees that lean too far in. I took a job at a supply depot out near Spokane. 4 walls, fluorescent lights, a lock on every door. But still, every night, just as I start to drift, I hear it. Not outside my window, not in the walls, inside my own voice, whispering, from deep down, like something hiding in the basement of my throat, saying things I haven't thought, repeating conversations I never had. Tower 6, come in, wind's clear, sky's clean. Then silence. And then my voice again, calm, familiar, but wrong. Requesting entry, I'm cold. Can I come back inside now? And I know if I ever say yes, even once, it won't just be me anymore, because I left something behind on that ridge, and something followed me home. Tower 9, I'm cold. It's dark out here. Can I come back inside now? You left the door open. Want more stories like this one? Subscribe to MindFuel Where real testimonies meet untold horrors, there's more coming, and some voices refuse to stay quiet.